Happy Thursday. Feliz Quinta-feira. How are you? How are you? Ooh, 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 ooh. It is Thursday. And tonight's topic is about freedom. So, hey, I'm already here. I'm wired. I'm happy. I'm pumped. I hope you are too. So, hope you all are doing well. Ooh, and my piece was first in the chat. Boa noite. Hey, in Portugal. Hey, Action VJ. Yes, tell the good people what to do. Hey, Venus. Diane, yes, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you are not already subscribed. Hey, Greta Cobb, how are you? Hey, Kay Renee. I see y'all all chatting with one another. Pinky, how you doing? Hey, Lenora, how are you? Hey, Pisces Pret. Yes. Oh my goodness. Tanya. Hey, Jametta. How are you? Teresa is in the house. Wait, where'd Teresa go? There she is. Hey. The ABX girl. Greta King. I got both Gretas tonight. Ooh, Danielle. Hey, Love Park Connection. How are you? Good to see you again. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Hey, Kim. Yes. Hey. Oh my goodness. So this has been a week. It has been a week. Hey, Free, how are you? Um, so it has been a week. Hey, one of our channel members. How are you, Patricia? You too can be a channel member. Hit the join button below this video. Hey, Celeste, how are you? So, yeah, it has been a week, right? Let me tell you. Hey, Jesse's in the house. How you doing, Jesse? I went away with the ladies. I've had a lot of ladies time in the past like month and a half, which was perfect. I've had lots of girlfriend times. We've done trips. I've had trips to Spain. I did a solo trip / house sitting trip to the UK. I went to the Algarve. No, not Algarve. Alentejo. And now I can't keep. Oh, Silver Coast this past weekend. So our dear furry friend Bailey was acting up on Friday night and not letting me sleep. I was like, what is wrong? Like, no sleep. So we get to the Silver Coast. I ran in a car. And so she's peeing. We're at the beach and she pees on the pavement. And we see that it's like blood tinged. So I'm like, oh, let me take her to the emergency vet. This isn't normal. Did not know that it was a holiday in Portugal. So there was like one vet doing the good Lord's work for like the entire town. Because remember, I'm not in Lisbon at that point, right? Like I'm an hour and some change away. So they do x-rays, all this other stuff. And poor sweet Bailey has a big bladder stone. They tell me to follow up with her vet. I follow up with the vet that I took her to last year. And they see her on Monday. They saw her on Monday. And they said it was very big. And they were like, well, it's too big for her to pass. So the sweet baby girl has to have surgery. So I took her today to find out what our options are in terms of the surgery. We're going to opt for something very little incision, not big, not invasive at all. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, sweet baby girl has to go for all these tests. And because of all the commotion with, baby girl being in pain and everything, I was supposed to be studying for my Portuguese class and my test last week that I thought was on Tuesday, but apparently it was on Monday. Ooh, baby. But because one of the students was not there on test day, and I wasn't the only one who thought it was Tuesday, she took her test today. So we couldn't get our test back because she hadn't taken the test. And it's like one test, right? So she took hers today during class, which means that tomorrow I'll have the results of my first Portuguese test. The whole test, just like the whole book, is in Portuguese. There's no English. So the instructions are in Portuguese, right? All the things. So I told my teacher I got a solid 10 wrong. 10 at least, right? Because spellings, and I asked her, how much emphasis are you going to put on my ability to spell these words, right? But look, we're going to see what happens. Today, she told us that we were mostly A's and B's. I mean, I like to think I'm in the A camp, but I don't know. Because there were two countries in particular I had to conjugate, and I was just like, I know I got that wrong. I went and made up some shit. But needless to say, Sweet Bailey's surgery is now in November. So prayers up for my little fur baby. But yes, I know. I've been doing a lot. So if anybody's emailed or anything, or you see me getting a little quieter the past couple days, because I've been focused on giving Bailey her pain meds, keeping her comfortable, the whole pet mom thing. Because I don't speak dog. She doesn't speak English. She's learning Portuguese too. So it's a whole thing. Thank you. I appreciate all of the well wishes. I know. And look, I hope they don't, because if she pronounced what I wrote out loud, it would be the word. Am I supposed to know how to spell desisaish? No. Not the first time out. Or know that the plural of azul is azuish. I did not know. I was like, azulish. I kept the L. So, I was close. Right? How much emphasis are we going to put on spelling? I don't know. I think the test was like 5 or 6 pages, because we just started chapter 6, unit 6 today. So it was a quiz on the first 4 units. It was a lot of material. But yeah, like, knowing Inglaterra was going to switch to English, I totally forgot that. I don't know why, but I did. And so I was like, oh, there were 4 questions I was supposed to get. I know I got those 4 wrong. And then like the whole azuish, azul to azuish, I know I got that wrong. But I could conjugate though. I did that. I know. Thank you. But I was hoping that I was going to have my results today, so that I could at least share with you my progress. But y'all will have to wait till next week. Although, you know what? It'll be something I share with the channel members too. Yes, I know. But like I said, please give me some grace if I've been a little bit quiet lately. Little bit quiet. Yes. So on the hurricane front, yes, those who have been impacted or have loved ones or colleagues, etc. There's a lot of hurricanes going on. Milton was the last one. Helene was the one before that. I did have some relatives that were evacuated, and they're safe in another state. And the hurricane did not pass through Pensacola, where my mom lives. So she is currently being spared. But my relatives in Tampa, not so much. But hopefully, no property damage, no loss of life. But yeah, that's how life be sometimes. We can't always predict all of the things that happen in the world. Certainly can't. And knowing now that we are less than 30 days to the election. Lord help us. Lord help us. But it's going to be all right, y'all. It's going to be all right. So those were it for my updates. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that. Yes, and I will. You guys will see me long before Bailey surgery. So tonight, y'all, as I'm gearing up for season 7 of the Blaxit Global podcast, we are in pre-production. I go back to recording beginning next week. So next couple weeks, I'm going to be trying to record as many episodes as I can before I have to be like dog mom / nurse. So I'm excited, right, to be bringing y'all another season. And with that, still got lots to talk about on this channel. So some of you, a lot of you, are on our mailing list. And a few months ago, I had shared an episode that I was on this wonderful podcast platform called Black Expat Stories. And you may have heard of it, I hope, if you are on the mailing list. But at the very least, you should be listening to it regardless, because the more of us that are telling these stories, the better. And so tonight, we are going to be talking about all things freedom, all things liberation. We're talking about the next great migration, and with none other than Miss Courtney Bowden. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing really great, Krishan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here. Hi, everybody that's tuning in live. It's been a crazy day, kind of. I'm planning another event, and so we launched it today. And you saw me kind of run in to log in on time. So thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this
Uh-oh.
conversation.
Yes, I've been looking forward to it. I know you've been doing the good work, and
Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure and an honor to have you here. So why don't you start by telling the good people who may not know, like, where you are tuning in from?
I am based currently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, which for those who may not be familiar with where it is right in the middle of Cancun and Tulum. So the sweet spot, as I like to call it.
And you've been there 3.5 years now.
I have. What's funny is I was only supposed to be here for 6 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. So if that's any indication as to how charming this place is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and time has flown so much.
Oh my gosh. And your backdrop is so dreamy. And so I can only imagine how beautiful the rest of the surrounding area is. And so what turned that 6 months into that now 3.5 years and counting?
Oh man, what really turned this into like a more permanent move was how I felt while I was
Mm.
here. To be honest, okay, so let me be real with you.
Please do.
So my husband and I, we moved here together, and initially part of our deal was to just do a 6 month experiment to see how we both would like it. And we started off our first 30 days we spent in Cancun.
Mm.
And that was feeling a little too vacation-y for us, if you can believe it. We were right off the hotel zone and
Mm.
felt kind of isolated. And so I was like, oh, I'm craving more community. I'm craving more of a slower pace.
Yeah.
So we heard about Playa del Carmen, made our way here, loved it, started looking for housing here to spend the rest of our 6 months. Uh, and so, but while I was in Cancun, within the first 2 weeks, every cell in my body knew that I wanted to stay in Mexico. And I hadn't even,
Ooh.
it literally, we hadn't even plugged into any kind of community. We hadn't even met anybody.
Wow.
We hadn't even settled in good. And I was like, yeah, whatever I'm feeling in my body, this calmness, this sense of peace, I have to live like this. I cannot go back. What can we do so that we don't have to go back? And we started having a serious conversation about what that would look like. And thank God for my supportive spouse, and to all the supportive spouses and partners out there. He entertained the idea because he felt good here too. He had a better work-life
Yes.
balance. Yeah, I mean, just it transformed the both of us. And when we looked up, we were like, yeah, let's stay here a little longer. So that
Oh
6 months
my
got
gosh.
extended, and we've gone through the immigration process now. We are legal residents here, and are loving it. We've been loving it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. I still, 2025, I'm committing. 2025 is going to be the year that I finally get to Mexico. Whether I get to
Hey,
Playa del Carmen, I don't know, but I am going to go to Mexico because I got too many peeps there now. How can I not? How can I not at this
yeah,
point?
yeah, come on by and see us.
Yes, yes. So tell us how you went from that, good feeling, that great feeling that, oh, we're never going back. We're going to figure out how to make this a longer term endeavor, to now creating this platform that's amplifying stories of Black expats, and as you called it, an ethnography. So how did that kind of come about?
That came about from me having so many conversations with folks once I
Mhm.
got here to Playa del Carmen. So honestly, the one of the other major factors for us staying was the community here, and
Mm.
that's it's still growing. And so I started meeting other Black Americans, Black Canadians, even some Black Brits
Mhm.
who were all saying some of the same things about why they were here, what drew them here, why they left their countries of origin. And I also realized too, because I'm a nerd, so I started reading Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns, which is a
Mm.
phenomenal book if you have not read it.
Mhm.
It's about the Great Migration that happened
Mhm.
in the United States, which started in 1915 and spanned all the way to until 1970. And that is when nearly half of Black Americans migrated from the deep South to the
Mhm.
North and to the West, Western
Mhm.
states. And once I started to understand the stories, folk stories here, what brought them here, why they stayed, and I started understanding the historical implications
Mhm.
of that and the parallels I started to see between these two very intriguing migration movements, I was like, oh my gosh, we have
Yeah.
to document these stories.
Mhm.
And you have been doing that for a while now, and you were a great inspiration for me, as well as some other folks who just kept the conversations going. And I thought, what will history say about this moment? Because we
Mhm.
are living, this is history in the making, if you ask me. I believe this is America's next great migration movement.
Mhm.
And so I'm so inspired by Zora Neale Hurston. She was a groundbreaking anthropologist,
Yes.
ethnographer, writer, scholar, just all the things. And I really loved her approach because she turned ethnography and anthropology on its head at the time, because
Mhm.
it was kind of frowned upon to actually immerse yourself in the culture that you're studying. But she dared to do it because she knew, she felt so deep in her bones that our cultures were worthy of study. Our cultures
Yes.
were worthy of documenting. And her approach was to just let people share their stories in their
Mhm.
own words. And she caught a lot of flack for it from a lot of the talented 10th Brigade, the Black Excellence Brigade, but in the early days, Black Excellence Brigade, but she did it anyway.
Mhm.
And when I started hearing these stories, they were so riveting and they moved me. And I was like, these stories don't need any editorializing.
Yeah.
I want to let people share their own accounts, because when the mainstream media gets a hold of what's happening, once they start really paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
I do not want these narratives to be whitewashed or co-opted. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is why I started Black Expat Stories. I wanted to also um, share these stories because I believe it's really difficult to be what you can't see. Had I
Very
had
true.
something like a Black Expat Stories or even a Blaxit Global when I was a teenager or a child,
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have made the decision to leave the United States a lot sooner. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation today with one of our passport members and my classmate now, Malcolm, in class, and we were saying like, wow, yeah, to create the thing, but if that thing existed, right, for me, Black's Global, right, or Black Expat Stories, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, how different things would be.
Right. And I'm thinking about the generations that will come, that follow us, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I'm thinking about those young people who are on the cusp or at an impasse in their life, and they're thinking about what's next. And I want them to be able to see what Dr. Joy Harden Bradford says about possibility models, examples,
Mm-hmm.
real life examples that are um, relatable. You don't have to be a celebrity, you don't have to be
Nope.
independently wealthy per se or an influencer in order to make this move and make this decision for
Mm-hmm.
your life. And because it's so intimidating at first when you start entertaining the idea of picking up everything and leaving the country.
A
So I
little
don't
bit.
want to
A little
right, like I
bit.
don't want to underestimate that feeling because I
Yeah.
felt it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought that, man, what if people could watch, listen to, read stories from everyday people
Mm-hmm.
who look like them, sound like them, um, who decided that their life was worthy of freedom's pursuit and doing something
Yes.
about it, not waiting for an outside entity to set them free. What does that
Mm-hmm.
look like? And it's happening in real time. We have some amazing people who are pioneering, who are leaving everything behind, their
Yeah.
families, their friends, to start anew and to create a life of freedom and ease and
Mm-hmm.
really subvert society's standards for our lives, for Black people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And my move has expanded my imagination, has
Yes.
expanded what's possible for me. And I wanted that for other people as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. I want to just acknowledge we have a new channel member. Congratulations, Sharon. Welcome to the club. Hey, hey, hey. You
Oh,
should join
Sharon.
Sharon too. And then Patricia was saying that her parents moved up from the Carolinas to PA, and my mom moved from Florida to New York during the Great Migration. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was actually one of the, because I had to work on my mom and get him ready for my move. But that was one of the things that I called as a parallel. I said, Mom, you came up during the Great Migration. Like, there's no difference, right? There's just, we've been migrating. And I've said so many times on this platform, right? When people say, oh, we should just move to this place or that place or whatever. And I said, Black people have been migrating this planet for centuries. And so if there's a place that you are called to for however long, go do it, right?
Yes.
Our ancestors have done more with less. We are fortunate, those of us who are choosing this life, in this time where we have these, you know, devices that I don't have to worry about what I buy in the store. I can just hold my phone up to it and tell it to translate it from Portuguese to English. I could find the words to talk to the doctor about my dog. Like, there are so many conveniences. I can move money from dollars to euros in seconds, right?
Yes.
That the barriers that existed before that made things feel seemingly impossible are now possible. So maybe let's stay on that thread for a little bit. Let's talk about the art of the possible, right? In probability possibility models. So for you, as you started to design this life for yourself, and you've seen others designing these lives for themselves, like what has been the through line, if you will?
That's a good question. The through line has been freedom, healing,
Mm.
and community or belonging. The search and the hunger for freedom beyond, what we might have known in our countries of origin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't. I mean, I think all of us here know what's happening and what has happened in the United States as far as Black people are concerned, and how apartheid is still a very real, is still a real reality. I think that people want the ability to just be.
Mm-hmm.
I find I found coming from the States, I came here in a state of burnout. I'm an entrepreneur. And so I've been running my business for like nearly a decade by the time I got here. And coming out of that rat race was so healing for me. It was so freeing for me
Mm-hmm.
because I had, for the first time in my adult life, realized that I could just be. I could be a human, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And people, when they come here, they often talk about the um, the slower pace. And I actually wrote about this the other day. And it's slow for some, but what I would say is that this place and other places like it are calibrated to the pace of humanity, not machinery.
Ooh, I love that. Say that again, please.
These places that we tend to go to and are drawn to are calibrated to the pace of humanity, not
Mm,
machinery.
mm. Yes, yes,
And if we
yeah,
think
that's
about
so
what
true.
capitalism does and has done, it is a machine, it is a system. And what are systems designed to do? They're designed to operate this in the same way perpetually,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who is at the head of it, right? Regardless
Yeah.
of who's the president, who's in Congress, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of folks, myself included, just recognize that, man, like we really have to unplug from the machine in
Mm-hmm.
order to
Yeah.
really feel human, to
Yeah.
return back to our humanity. So freedom is a huge thing for folks.
Mm-hmm.
Healing is another. Like I said, my time here has been transformative. It has been healing. I've been able to not just tend to my well-being physically, but mentally. I have mental clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at peace. I sleep so well at night. I don't stress and worry about so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that studies show that stress kills us. It will take you out of here.
Yes. Yes. And the weathering that happens because of, it's a confluence of things, right? You have, intergenerational trauma compounded with environmental racism, right? Physical threats, perceived threats, being slighted in the workplace, educational racism, like the medical racism, right? The list goes on and on. And what that does to our bodies, what that does to dysregulate our nervous systems. Like that was the biggest like awakening for me when I got here. It was like, whoa,
Yes.
like my nervous system says thank you every day for leaving.
Yes.
And I don't know, and I don't care like how much money like I could have made had I stayed. It wouldn't have been worth it if I was spending all of it on medical bills to keep me in the machine so that I could keep on that hamster wheel running the rat race, or shorten my lifespan and not be able to enjoy the things that I'm able to enjoy now on a daily basis.
Yes. Yes. And I'm really glad you mentioned regulating the nervous system and having a longer lifespan, because when I got here, after I settled in, my nervous system was thanking me too, and it does thank me every day. Um, but in 2020,
Mhm.
I lost a dear friend to suicide.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And we were the same exact age.
Wow.
I had never in all my life experienced a loss like that before.
Mhm.
Suicide for me prior to that time was only a theory,
Mhm.
unfortunately. I didn't understand it. I could empathize with folks who were touched by it, but
Mhm.
it wasn't until I experienced that loss that I was like, okay, this is super heavy. And when I looked at my friend in her casket,
Mhm.
something in me broke. It shifted forever.
Mhm.
And of course, this was during like the height of the pandemic. So we were all at home, also stewing in our own thoughts and seeing what
Mhm.
was happening in society. But it really made me reevaluate how I was living my life.
Mhm.
And I recognized that if I didn't do something different, then I could very well end up the same way. And I had never had suicidal thoughts or ideations or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that, but
Mhm.
to see this beautiful, brilliant Black woman who's accomplished, who is
Mhm.
respected in her profession and in her community, among her family and friends,
Mhm.
to experience such hopelessness,
Yeah.
to make that choice, I recognized then that I was not immune to the same
Mm.
things.
Yeah.
And something had to give for me.
Mhm.
And, you know, in that, in the depths of my grief, I just decided after I came out of it a little bit that I was
Mhm.
going to live. I was going to
Mm.
live. And I had to figure out what that was going to look like for me moving forward. Because the way that I was living, it wasn't going to be sustainable. I wasn't going to make it.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to make it. All the
Wow.
stress, all of the comparisons, all of the expectations, all of the things that you mentioned, the isms, the racism, the all of that.
Mhm.
It conspires on a daily basis to take us out of here.
Yeah. Daily.
And I didn't want to be in that number. I knew that I
Mhm.
had so much more life to live. And
Mhm.
in addition to that, and just to kind of touch on the health aspect of it, the healing aspect of just being here, I lost my father at 49 years old, about 15
Wow.
years ago. 49.
Oh
I was
God.
21 at the time.
Wow.
And now that I'm 37, and as every year that I get older, I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
how much life would he have had ahead of him
Mhm.
had he not experienced all of those compounding comorbidities,
Yes.
not just physical comorbidities, right, but societal comorbidities
Mhm.
that contributed to all of those things.
Mhm.
And I realized that it was my environment. It was
Mhm.
it was not me.
Yeah.
It was my environment. And
Mhm.
I needed to shift that.
Yeah.
And being here in the sunlight, among it within nature, as you can see, I have what I like to call my
Yes.
jungle garden here.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I love it. I use it as my office, my yoga studio, my prayer closet. It's everything.
Wow.
Um, uh, Being here in nature,
Mhm.
being more active physically, and eating whole foods that aren't pumped up with antibiotics,
Mhm.
pesticides, and all of this other foolishness was important to me, because I saw firsthand what an environment can do to somebody who really deserve to live way
Yeah.
longer than 49, you know.
I mean,
Um,
that's so
so
young.
so young.
Mhm.
And so as I started to take stock of everything, I, I just knew that I needed to make a radical shift. And the other
Mhm.
thing too, the other through line that I've observed in all these conversations that I've had and these encounters that I've had with Black expats and immigrants is the community
Yeah.
aspect, belonging. Playa del Carmen has one of the best communities here. And whether you're in the creative community, whether you are in the spiritual community, whatever subset, whatever interest you're into, there's a community around it, and people really, truly rally together and support each other. And also, immigrating to a country that truly values family and connection. Like,
Mhm.
Mexicans don't play about their family, and they take the time to spend with their family on Sundays. That's family day. That's the time
Mhm.
that you use to reconnect. I mean, here in our neighborhood, our common spaces are always reserved for birthday parties, dinners. People are always coming together. And I couldn't say the
Wow.
same in my experience in the States because everybody's so
Yeah.
busy. Everybody's so exhausted working, commuting, taking care of kids, working overtime, trying to
Mhm.
just, maintain. But here, there's space to truly connect and commune and fellowship. And I didn't recognize how important that was to me until I had it in abundance here. And it
Yeah.
truly is like the life blood of a person because we're wired for connection as humans. We're not supposed to be
Exactly.
individualistic. We're not supposed to be lone rangers, lone wolves. We need each other.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't think the system that we one escaped from, right, uh, can exist longer if it continues down that path of hypercapitalism, individualism, because what we've seen is this, huge, really this big chasm that exists now where you have these factions. And what used to
Mm,
be the fringe is now mainstream, right? The Tea Party was supposed to be the fringe, the QAnon folks and all of that stuff. And then now the MAGA, it's like now it's like the dominant force.
yeah.
And I see now with, like I said, we're weeks away now from the election and I've already voted. And yes, y'all, you can vote from abroad. Um,
Yes, you can.
but what I see is, and I don't try to, be the Debbie Downer about the hopefulness that is surrounding and the energy of the Harris Walls ticket, but is to say that um, sometimes people forget, right? Like we were caught up in the euphoria of the Obama presidency in its first term and then forgot what happened 2 years in at the midterms. And it's twofold. I think one is that it just shows how much Americans don't know about how politics works, about their
Mhm.
civil liberties, their civil rights, how the government works. And I think that's a teachable moment as we have this air of excitement and enthusiasm. Is that people should be voting. They should be voting down the ticket. They should be voting at every election. They should not be skipping the midterms. But I also see this, because I've been doing this now almost 5 years, some people kind of backpedaling, like, oh, I'm going to see how this plays out with the election. buy myself more time, save some more money. Like in my mind, right, the excuses start to come in, which, the way I feel it is it's more indicative of fear setting in and that becoming the predominant emotion rather than being in tune to what you know to be true, right? Somebody had put it, Pinky, in the comment, right? Like, America is not a country, it's a corporation, right? You are just a widget, right? You're a cog
That's
in
a
the
good way to put
machine.
it.
You are a widget, right? And
Yep.
once that widget is worn out, they're just gonna pick up another widget, put it in there, and keep it moving, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so, to the maybe before I get to the next question, is how are you viewing, or maybe how are you viewing the upcoming election within the framework of the next great migration? Tough question.
This election, you know, it's a good question. It's a very relevant question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just had a conversation with Stephanie Perry and Rashida Dow of the Exodus Summit about this too.
Mm-hmm.
And they were telling me about how some of the folks that are subscribed to their list are kind of saying some of the same things, which is
Mm-hmm.
surprising to me because I haven't heard that personally from folks that I'm around. But I can believe it to be true because, like you said, it's I think it's twofold, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's fear setting in because this is a Herculean undertaking. I don't want to ever downplay what it
Mm-hmm.
means to pick up and leave your country.
Yeah.
Um, I also think it is some of it could be attributed to
Mm.
denial of a country that is actively in collapse.
Ooh. Now, for
Um,
those that don't realize that it's in collapse, what might
because I know
what
that's
might
heavy.
be an example or two?
That's heavy. Well, I think that we can even look at, let's just take infrastructure, for instance,
Mm.
which is really important right now because we're dealing with, in the States, we're dealing with um, back to back hurricanes,
Yes.
record breaking hurricanes that have
Mm-hmm.
ravaged so much of the Southeast, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a Hurricane Helene, which
Mm-hmm.
came 300 miles inland and flooded
Yes.
Asheville, North Carolina. Like, be clear, that's Appalachia. That's mountain. That's mountainous.
Yes.
That
Yes.
wasn't supposed to happen.
No.
Okay. And so when you look at the images or videos of these roads, literally like they're cratered,
Mm-hmm.
collapsed completely. I think that there's no clearer example than
Mm-hmm.
that of
Mm-hmm.
a country in active collapse,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think there are other examples that we can even pull from too, but that is extra salient, especially
Yeah.
for where we are right now with climate change and these storms that are
Mm-hmm.
breaking records, that are getting stronger, that are coming sooner. Right, hurricane season starts sooner and sooner, it seems, and I live in a
Yeah.
hurricane region, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
extra sensitive to that. But you asked about the election and my thoughts on it as it relates to the Great Migration. I think that folks who see what's happening, and to your earlier point about trusting what they see and what they know to be true and moving in that vein, I
Mm-hmm.
think that those folks are going to still maintain their plans of either making a move or what have you. Um, Other folks who want to ride it out and see what happens, I think that that is very optimistic, very optimistic. But at the same time, I really struggle with what a if Harris wins,
Mm-hmm.
for instance. Um, I struggle with what things are going to look like after, okay? Because prior to moving here in Mexico, I lived in a town called Alpharetta, Georgia,
Mm.
which is in North Fulton County, north of Atlanta. And in around the election, the last election, we saw we saw folks who were Trump supporters literally surrounding, protesting on all four corners of a major artery throughout this city. And when I say protesting, I don't mean just like little cute picket signs. I mean big F-150 trucks, souped up, big tires, driving crazily around these intersections with all kinds of flags that told you exactly where they stood. And so I think that one of the things that's different from the excitement around Obama was that we did not have a Donald Trump to embolden these racists, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, in 2008, right? When that all that hope and that belief in change was
Mm-hmm.
so poignant, was so apparent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that the folks that were once on the fringes, like you mentioned earlier, are have now taken center stage,
Yeah.
and I am not sure what it's going to look like either way, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
Harris wins or whether Trump wins, and
Mm-hmm.
that really makes me uneasy. In addition to that, even if Harris wins, I am deeply concerned and troubled by the United States foreign policy. It's abysmal. What's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the occupied territory of Palestine is genocide
Oof.
that our tax dollars are funding,
Yes.
right? And so, what concerns me is somebody who is going to essentially who has said that they're going to take up the mantle of the Biden administration if they win. What does that mean? What does that look
Yeah.
like? Sure,
Mm-hmm.
there could be, all kinds of social reform programs spared and created inside the states,
Mm-hmm.
but we are a globalized society.
Yeah.
And what we do and how we show up around the world
Mm-hmm.
matters.
Mm-hmm.
It matters. And so I think that, and the fact that the election is so close, like the the fact that it's like a dead heat also troubles me because arguably, arguably the choice should be clear, right?
You would think.
You would think
34 count felon,
felony,
multiple fraud, bankruptcies, baby mama slash wives that you've imported from other countries, but you got a problem with immigrants. Yeah, you would
sex
think that
offender,
over a qualified Black woman who's worked herself up from McDonald's, right, to
right?
ascend to the White House, it should be no comparison, right? Because remember, Captain Bone Spurs couldn't even serve in the military, but yet, he wants to be, in charge of the armed
The
forces once
commander in
again,
chief.
even though he called for a coup just a few years ago.
Right. Right. If
Yeah.
we're thinking about the qualifications
Mhm.
of these two candidates, if we're comparing the two,
Mhm.
you would think it would be a no brainer. And the fact that it's not
Mhm.
gives me great pause.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make me as optimistic as some of these older folks about what
Mhm.
Harris presidency and administration could even bring and do, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Mhm.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
vote. I'm gonna vote. Okay. I'm making that clear. And I because I believe it's important.
Mhm.
And um our folks bled and died for the right.
Yes.
And I dare not take that for granted.
Mhm.
At the same time, um, it is incumbent upon us to read the tea leaves, because when you're talking about societies that are in active collapse, and we talk about failed states, we don't want to say these words, and we don't want to have the
Mhm.
real talk about it, because that's scary, and we don't know what it's going to look like, and we don't necessarily want to
Mm.
believe it's that dire, but it is.
Mhm.
It is. And I think that more than anything, we should be having conversations around what what it looks like to survive in active collapse. Like,
Yeah.
we need to get real.
Yeah. And that's why conversations like this are so important, and that's why I titled this conversation the way it did, because if it goes back to what we talked about before about possibility models and representation, right? It's seeing people that look like you, that are living these lives that are no different than the people that are watching. A couple of years ago, I was sitting in that seat, right? I was sitting in my apartment watching people like Stephanie and Rashida, or Adelia that's in the comments, and
Hey, Adele.
waiting for, hey Adelia, and waiting for it to be my time, right? and
Mm-hmm.
and and still trying to keep the fire lit within me to stay focused and have those horse blinders on, all the while, and that's really where Blaxit Global was born out of, the world being on fire with the pandemic and feeling like, okay, I've got this plan in motion. What else do I have to lose, right? Let me put it out there, right? But to your point about, the US being in active decline, it makes me think about, really, about the pandemic, right? When we were seeing, things on the news about what was going on in different parts of the world, and, colds, and, that's morphing into something, this new virus, etc. And then it was like a switch got flipped, and it was like, oh, lockdown, everybody in the house. Doop, 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 doop. It was just like a switch. There wasn't like a gradual, hey, we're going to be doing this and da da da. And that's how I feel like it's going to be. One day you're going to be living this one life, and then the next day you're going to be disillusioned because you're like, well, what the just happened? Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's incumbent upon us to be prepared and to see the signs when you're looking at things like attacks on organizations like the Fearless Fund, right? When
Yes.
Black entrepreneurs get less than 1% of venture capital funding, when you see the attack on HBCUs, when you see the dismantling and attacks on DEI or companies that support those initiatives in schools, etc., when you see books being banned and burned, right? When you see the whittling down of your voting rights, when you see that everybody witnessed George Floyd being murdered, and yet we are about to hit 2025, which means it will be almost 5 years and we still do not have the George Floyd justice in policing legislation, nor do we have voter protections that how many years did John Lewis continue to put that forth? And yet we still see gerrymandering going on. We still see redlining happening, right? And it's
Yeah,
like we get up in the morning, time to make the donuts, rinse and repeat. Let's go to Starbucks, let's buy some other shit, and not focused on, hey, you know what? I need to be planning my exit.
yeah. Or at least if folks can't physically leave, because that's not necessarily an option for everybody,
True.
but making a plan to, like you said, be able to not just survive but thrive in what's to come. you know that is so important to me now. I'm not sure if those watching have heard about the biolab explosion that happened in Rockdale County, Georgia, which is
No.
not too far from the Atlanta area. I actually have friends there. There was an explosion. I think that biolab was producing chlorine for swimming pools, and a couple weeks ago, that lab exploded, spilling
What?
all kinds of toxic gas into the air. They were saying that all the way in Atlanta, folks were smelling chlorine. Okay. They had a shelter in place order for parts of Rockdale County. And my mother lives in Stone Mountain, okay, which is not too far from that area, because Rockdale County includes Conyers, Lithonia, etc.
Mm.
And thankfully, she was not there. She was not in town during that time, and she's caring for my grandmother right now out of state. But I had to call her and say, "Hey, this is what happened. If you didn't know, and you may want to make a plan to purchase some gas masks."
Wow.
So I think that it's important for us to really pay attention, because, and that's another reason why I'm so passionate about what happens in the media and about media literacy,
Mm-hmm.
because media is the most powerful way to tell a story.
Yes.
And journalists, these large mainstream media companies, they ultimately decide what we see and what we do not see, and how
Mm-hmm.
we see it if they decide to show it, and how long they're going to cover it, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so um, this is not something that is in any, like, this is not an apocalyptic fictional type of thing. This
Mm-hmm.
is real. This is right now, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, and I really want people to understand where we're at. And it's sometimes challenging, because all of us have our own lives, that,
Mm-hmm.
our own little fires that we're actively trying to put out and manage every single day. And so I'm never one to demonize folks for not knowing what's happening, or what have you. But not knowing is not going to make you immune from the outcomes, the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of what's happening. And so um I, it's a lot,
Yeah.
for people who are thinking about, riding it out, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fair. If Vice President Harris wins, it could be better than a Trump administration in many ways. But when you think about structures physically, when they are in
Mm-hmm.
collapse, you can't control the pace at which that happens, right? Like, you
Mm.
can't, like, when a building is collapsing, the best thing that you can do is get out.
Yeah. Run.
for your life,
Yeah.
and treat it like the emergency it is. And that's just what I want people to know and understand, and be in active
Mhm.
conversations within their community. Because again, we operate in such an individualistic society
Mhm.
that we need to be having these conversations with each other, with our
Yes.
family, with our friends, making plans for how to take care of each other, because we
Mhm.
cannot rely on the government. We can't rely on all of these different fixtures and these organizations to save us, because honestly, we are some of the last to be saved,
Whoo. Tell it.
if we are saved.
Tell it.
We're not very high on the priority list, you know?
No. No.
So it's
No.
easy to
At one
delude
point,
oneself.
we outnumbered our white counterparts, and now we are 13% of the population.
Yes.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that if you are making your plans to exit right now, I think that's a good plan. Keep on. Don't stop now. Like I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily put things on pause just based on who is in the White House.
Yeah. Because you know what? Honestly, I think that who's in the office to some extent doesn't really affect your day to day, right? In terms of putting money in your pocket and all this other stuff. Like when I think about times in which we had, like, we haven't had a surplus in the United States since Bill Clinton. Did I sleep better at night once Trump got out of office? Absolutely. Right. But I don't feel like, well, maybe that's not a great example because I was kind of more focused on what was happening in the news because he was so unpredictable that I was just like, okay, I need to know what his ass did today. Right.
It was a Trump show. Every day it was
Every
something
day it
new.
was something, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
please don't let him do something that's gonna make us all die, right? Like,
Please don't press that button. That he
yeah, it was
that,
just like, okay, so probably not the best example, but outside of him, right? But I feel like part of me, as much as I am enthused, and I did vote for Kamala, I have no problem saying that, um, is, you know, part of me is also conflicted because it's like, oh, now we on the brink and now you want to give it to us? Now you want to give it to a black woman? Like,
you,
so you could turn
you know
around
what
and
that phenomenon is
blame,
called, right?
yeah, like, it is a, you could blame us later, right? Because they still talk about Obama. He's the reason why the hurricanes came and all this other dumb shit, right? And
Right.
so I'm just like, ooh. Um, but part of me is just like, and then also the backlash and the blacklash, right?
Yeah.
Because the birther movement started, you know, under Trump during Obama's administration. And again, which was one of those fringe type of movements that then,
Yeah.
now you said, it morphed, right? Because that's what the US does, right? That's what systems do. They optimize. And this is where we are today. And I don't think that, you can look at the current environment and the current situation and think that a 4-year term or at best an 8-year term is magically going to dismantle what has been the undergird of this country for centuries at this point, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I think it's unfair. to assume or have this belief that, you know, everything's going to be like popcorn and lollipops, because it isn't, right? And, you know, like you said, you gave the infrastructure as a great example. You know, we saw what happened with the bridge, you know, in, I believe it was Baltimore earlier this year. And there's been, you know, other
Mm-hmm.
examples. And it's just to say that the writing is on the wall, the things that are going on in, you know, multiple fronts, with the US having proxy wars. And these are things that put us all at risk. And so
Absolutely.
the response is not to disengage and say, oh, I'm going to be an ostrich and bury my head in the sand, and somebody else will take up the mantle and it'll all go away, right? I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is, the response should be to be even more engaged, which is why I, you know, steadfastly made sure I voted. But the thing is to also be realistic about the outcome and how much agency you actually have. And I think that's something that has been lost on us for a while, is the sense of community, which we've all, those of us that have taken this leap abroad, have found our community that we've been longing for, but also the ability to reclaim our sense of agency. And when you're in the United States, and I say this as something that, you know, it's only been like 13 months, I didn't feel like I had a big sense of agency. I didn't have a big sense of community there the way I
Yeah.
do now.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And that's how I felt. I felt like I didn't feel entirely powerless, but I definitely felt defeated,
Mm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how excellent I
Mm-hmm.
was. There were still very real factors, systemic and
Mm-hmm.
institutionalized factors,
Mm-hmm.
that would prevent me from thriving in the way that I wanted to, and in the way that we all deserve to, you
Yeah.
know? And I read somewhere that somebody said, you know, all of the environmental factors that are happening in the states, the infrastructure, the impacts of the natural disasters, you know, the weather, climate, the lack of preparation, and the lack of attention to those things is rooted in racism,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, heaven forbid Black folks and people of color enjoy all of these new developments, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's why we have cities that are hotter in some areas than others, because, you know, these concrete jungles, they're essentially deforesting these places. That's why environmental racism exists. And so when you have things like the biolab explosion, who does
Mm-hmm.
it impact disproportionately,
Yeah.
you know? And so it, to me, it got to a point where it was inescapable. The impacts of racism and systemic exclusion and
Mm-hmm.
oppression were inescapable.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think that it's impossible to reform rotten, and the system is rotten, and it's time for it to be revolutionized. And the only way the revolution happens is if things die, you
Yeah.
know. And that's hard to hear, because there will be, what do you do when the chips fall? You know, like how does that work? And there's a lot of uncertainty in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the current way that we're living is not sustainable. It was never meant for us to sustain. We're talking about a place that was never meant for us to experience freedom and that agency that you're talking about, Krishan.
Mm-hmm.
And so to try to like retrofit it in some type of way by electing, Black heads of state is cute in theory, but, finally handing over the reins to a collapsing empire to a Black woman is akin to the glass cliff theory that a lot of these corporations do, right? When they're on the brink of closure or bankruptcy, or collapse, they're like, okay, well, let's bring in some help. Let's like these Black people, Black women, people of color, finally, take a swing
Yeah.
at it. And
Yeah.
by then it's too late because there's so much work to be done. And then they look like a failure if things haven't turned around as quickly. And so I'm also concerned about that too. And I'm really grateful that we do have the means, right? Because I'm not, it's not lost on me the luxury and the privilege it is to be able to say, I'm leaving, right? Because you have to have a way to have income that is divorced from having to show up in person. You have to have a passport. You have to have all of these things. And I don't want to sugarcoat that or gloss over that. But for the folks who have the means and the ability, it's something to consider. It's something to consider. And starting over isn't as scary as we like for it to believe. Actually, we're supposed to start over a lot in life. Because I feel like if you're not starting over in different seasons of your life, then are you really living?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the ability to start over, that blank slate, gives you the opportunity to really design a life that is aligned with your values and your well-being. And that's one of the outcomes, the beautiful outcomes I see of making this choice, is that, like, yes, it can be scary. Yes, it can be overwhelming. Yes, it can be lonely sometimes, because I know that when we moved, folks looked at us like we were crazy. The few people that we did tell that we were leaving, because we didn't tell folks that we were gone until about a year in. Because people will be like stealth mode. We told our family and close friends, but that was about it. But like people like, you moved to Mexico on purpose?
Oh, I was at the store.
Like, you moving to Mexico on purpose? Why? Because of all of the negative connotations that we believe and that we're fed by the media about other places in the world. And when you get to these places, even just visiting, you realize that we've been lied to. And you realize that the myth of American exceptionalism is just that. We are not the best. We're not.
If we had the best healthcare system in the world, wouldn't other countries want to replicate it?
Yes, right, exactly.
No other country has attempted to replicate the shit show that is America's healthcare. So much so that when you are abroad and you have to travel to the US for any period of time, you are hard pressed to find somebody who's going to insure you, or you're going to pay out the ass, because the probability that you'll have some event, paper cut, right, could cost you $1,000. And they're like, oh, hell no, right?
Yeah.
Even like today, taking my dog to the vet. I had to take her a couple times. Took her today to the vet. I was in there for over an hour. It was €19. I was like, praise the Lord.
€19? That's unheard of. That'd be unheard of in the States. €19 won't even feed your dog.
Exactly. I'm like, I call him, I'm like, I'm not coming back.
Yeah, yeah. And once you get a taste of what life could be like, and it's not for everybody, like, I'm not gonna make this out to be some utopia or euphoric experience all the time, but when you do move outside the boundaries and the borders of your birthplace and be open-minded, you'll start to see some of the gaps and some of the things that we were robbed of,
Mm.
you know? And you'll likely experience a period of bitterness and resentment because you're like, all this time,
Yes.
you don't mean to
Yeah.
tell me, these other countries have managed to make universal health care work or a universal basic income work, and
And
we
we're
can't
still
seem to
twiddling our
get it together.
thumbs. Yeah.
Right.
And they'll say everything. Oh, well, the US is too big. We have way more people. Da, da, da. We're so violent. And it's just like, oh. They
Yeah,
have a reason for everything.
everything. Yeah.
Everything.
And that's
And it's
because it's a
like,
corporation.
but aren't people people? Right? Like everything, even just me studying now Portuguese as an adult learner. And I think I'm getting a good grasp of the language. And I think about it, and this is total immersion, right? Like all
Yeah.
in Portuguese. I mean, my teacher is a native Portuguese speaker who's teaching in English, which is not her first language. So, and then my classmates, some are Pakistani, some are Nepalese, some are from, one is from Singapore, one is from Russia, two are from Iran, and most of them English is not their first language. So they're learning another language that's being taught in one language that isn't their native language. The only thing
Oof.
that tripped me up was her pointing to a waste paper basket and calling it a dustbin, right? And so, like, but all that is to say is learning a language as an adult. And I know sometimes people think that it's really scary, but most of the rest of the world speak other languages in English, right?
Yes.
And and me approaching this by choice has me more invested, more engaged than the 8 years, to be honest, that I studied Spanish when I was in school, when I was much younger. And 40 minutes, 45 minutes, mostly taught in English, just put in vocabulary words that you want me to memorize. And I'm not talking to anybody else in the
Right. You're not
language when
using
I
it.
leave. And so, me spending 10 hours a week and being completely immersed. And now I realize, like, wow, the way we even teach foreign languages in the US is just wrong. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's why I can be in this classroom and we had to do this exercise where we went through each person and say, "Oh, how many languages do you speak?" Of course, when you got to the Americans, you're like, "One."
One. Two if you count AABE.
Yeah, exactly, right? But mind you, my classmates are like, "Oh, wow, I can speak Arabic, I can speak this," and I'm just like,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
So
That's something, right? Because it's
yeah,
like, and that goes back to this idea of American exceptionalism
yes,
that and colonialism. Let's also call a thing a thing. That
hmm
we have to that everybody is supposed to speak the king's English to the queen's taste, and that only.
mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I don't think the United States actually has um, a national language because we're supposed to be a melting pot, right? But we sort of force people
hmm
into um, only speaking English, or we complain
Yeah,
when folks, don't speak it perfectly, or they they
hmm
they come to the states not speaking at all.
hmm
And what I found here, and at least in this region of Mexico, is that folks are excited and they're really welcoming and warm when you attempt to speak the language, and
Wow.
that opens up so much more opportunity to
Mhm.
connect. It
Yeah.
makes your world richer,
Mhm.
and that's one of the driving factors for me learning Spanish, like for real this time, because like you, I spent years in high school, even some college, but it never was real to me. I couldn't really connect it to
Mhm.
anything. And
Yeah.
now that I'm like, how to take cabs, now that I have to
Mhm.
go to the grocery store, you're using it, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And also, I'm just a language girly. Like I love words in any
Mhm.
language, and I found that these romance languages like Spanish and Italian and Portuguese, they just sound so beautiful. Like when you
Mhm.
greet somebody in
Yeah.
Spanish, any time of the day, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night, you're
Mhm.
telling somebody good morning, good day,
Yeah.
good afternoon. When you say goodbye to somebody, you say adios. What does that mean? Like
Mhm.
that means to God, literally, adios. You're speaking life to
Yeah.
people, and
Mhm.
and so I think that's one of the other amazing things about being here and having the opportunity to learn another language slowly but surely, slowly but
Oh
surely.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm glad that you're having this experience and like you said, meeting other people that are on this journey as well.
Mm,
Not only the people that you feature on your platform, but the people that you're in community with. Because you're right. It's like when you get that first taste. And for me, it was traveling internationally by myself in 2017 that
mhm.
really helped me recommit to this journey, even though I knew it was some years down the road. Um, but ultimately, getting here, getting to the finish line, living this fabulous life, um, I want one to experience more of it every chance I get. But two, that's why I do what I do because I know that other people, if they are willing and fortunate enough to get in community and tap in and get the resources and get themselves to where they can get out, whether it be a
Mhm.
sabbatical, whether it be, you know, just, a holiday, whatever it is, whatever duration that it looks like, right? 6 months that becomes 3.5 years, whatever it is, right? Is that it will be transformative on so many levels.
Yes, it is. And I tell people I'm not even the same person. I'm a
Mm,
different woman. I'm a better human. And making this move has also prompted me to be more of a conscious global citizen. You
mm,
know,
mhm,
because what I found in conversation with a lot of people, because I sort of a melting pot in itself. It's a huge tourist draw. Folks come from all over the world, so I've had an amazing opportunity to talk to people from all over, and I'm always floored by how much folks know about the United States and how little we know about other places, And so being here, kind of like a fish out of water, it makes you more intentional
mhm,
about learning about the
mhm.
place that you're in, learning the history,
Yeah.
why things are a certain way, and things like that. So it it gives you such it also gives you a rich perspective too.
Mhm,
You're not just thinking of things from an Americanized perspective where it seems like so much kind of revolves around us in a way.
mhm.
Um, and I love that. I'm
Yeah.
loving that. I'm loving this journey of really coming into the consciousness of being a global citizen.
Oh, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
humbling.
And hey, I wanted to say hi to another channel member, a new channel member. Hey, Greta. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I think the global citizen the way we digest, well, I know you're in Mexico and I'm in Portugal, but news and watching long form content. Now, granted, I don't understand all the things that are said in the news, but seeing, long form content, one of the things that I think I noticed immediately were the commercials, like, and not just on television, but environmental media like billboards and stuff.
Yes.
I wasn't seeing like all of that, thrown down my throat. Like every 5 minutes, it's an ad, it's an ad, it's an ad. Go buy this, go buy that, go watch this, go watch that. And no commercials about pharmaceuticals. And if your butt itches, you might have this disease. And if you take this medicine, it'll fix this, but it's going to cause some other shit to happen that has side effects that are like 10 miles long. And I'm just like, it's
Right.
such a relief to avoid that. And it's only when I turn my VPN on and watch US news that I'm like, oh, here we go. Right.
Inundated.
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 As soon as I slide that little thing and I go and I'm like, okay, let me see, let me watch something. I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta sit through this shit.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Especially like um because we have a service where we can watch some TV stations from the United States.
Mm,
And those, like, if you happen to sit down probably between the hours of like 11 a.m. and about 4 p.m., oh, it's all pharmaceutical ads.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
totally. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
no wonder
Yeah.
folks are
Yeah.
so depressed, because it's like you're watching this thing on TV, especially if it's like news or
Hmm.
daytime talk shows, and then boom, restless leg syndrome medicine
Yeah,
that's gonna make you want to
exactly.
commit suicide. Like what?
Yes. It's so crazy. And then just how expensive it is. I remember this was 20, I think it's like either 2020 or 2021. It was a period when I was without health insurance and I take a statin and I needed to get a refill. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to even know how much it's going to be because I don't have no insurance, right? 90-day supply.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 300 and something dollars because I didn't want to chance it. Because I was like, well, I don't know what happens if I stop it cold. I don't know how long till I'm gonna get another job, right? Because your job and your insurance are like this, right?
They're
Whereas now,
besties.
like, it's time for me to renew my my not life insurance, my health insurance here, and I'll renew my policy. It's going up slightly because I'm in a new age band, but 1,300 for the year, right? So I needed to get my statin here. And I went to fill the prescription the other day. Now this was I could have gotten all 3 months, but I was like, I'll just get one today. And she's like, oh, you don't have your card yet, because I'm still trying to get my I think they call it NHS card, National
Okay.
Health and National Health Insurance card. And I was like, no. She's like, oh, it's gonna be a bit high, €3. That
Wait. So 3 euro was high.
was
That's
high.
that's what she's talking about.
That was
So
high.
what's the regular price? Free?
I think so. I was like,
Oh
girl,
wow.
when I paid not even 3, 4 years ago, 300.
A hundred
I
times
was
that.
like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. But again, America will make you believe, oh, best healthcare in the world. But nope, nope, nope. I've had stories since I've been here. I was actually away this weekend. Another person I was with had another story where there were things that were missed medically that once
Mm.
they came to Portugal and, got just an exam, a regular exam. They were like, "Oh, did you know blah blah blah?" Right? I found a tooth that was apparently backwards. I've had my teeth cleaned every 6 months. I've
Yeah.
had countless x-rays. Not one doctor ever said, "Hey, you got a tooth that's backward." Right?
And it's like, did y'all even see it? Like, at
Yeah.
this, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's wild.
I've
I went
had
to the
knee
doctor.
issues for, ever since I entered my 30s. I finally was like, you know what? Let me get this like really, really looked at. I
Uh huh.
attempted to in the States. They're like, oh. I went in and they wrote the script, got both knees done, got an ultrasound, got an x-ray, have a follow-up. They told me what the condition was, I think like 2 days later. I'm like, okay.
Yes, they
Right?
do not delay. Yes,
No.
I love that. I love that. Here too, people ask about the healthcare, and I haven't spent a lot of time in the healthcare system, but I went to the doctor recently. I went
Mm,
to an OBGYN to get my annual, and I was so stunned that this doctor, first of all, it's such a pleasant experience. When you go into the doctor's office, you actually sit down. She was at a desk,
mm.
and you sit down and you have a conversation
Yeah,
with your
yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
And your doctor asks you how you are, and she actually waits for the answer, you know?
Mhm.
And then, go into the changing room, get in the robe. In the same suite is the ultrasound machine and sort of like a large screen TV.
Mhm.
And she hooked everything up so that I could have visibility
Yeah.
to what she was seeing. And I was like, huh, in all my days, I've never seen my cervix. She showed me my cervix. Like,
Wow.
it's those things. And she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
walking me through various things like, hey, this is what this is looking like and what this is
Mhm.
supposed to look. And just the ethic of care, I
Yes.
find, is so much better. I remember being in the States, I was so adamant about having a black OBGYN
Mhm.
because I felt like I that was one of the best ways to get the most thorough care, you know.
Mhm.
And here it's that's not even a thought. Like you don't even have to strategize like that because
Mhm.
the they actually, embody the creed like do no harm, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
There's not
refreshing.
racism
Yeah.
inherent in the medical system here.
Mhm.
So it is refreshing. I agree.
Yeah, it's like I can exhale.
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
exhale. And just as empowered as I feel, about my own health. If I have something that doesn't feel right, I don't have to go and do my Googles and all the things to, WebMD and self diagnose and to avoid
Yes.
going to the doctor because it's not the copay, it's the bill that comes after, right? And you have no visibility to how much things cost.
No, yeah.
And so a lot of people delay treatment, especially when you don't have insurance. But when you think about the disease progression of a lot of things in the U.S., it's really because people delay going to their doctor for fear of what the cost is. So they try to treat it on their own. They may do over the counter stuff, some other concoction, or ignore it
Mhm.
altogether. And then it compounds into something,
Mhm.
that, obviously costs a whole heck of a lot more. Now I'm just like, oh, you know what? If I don't feel well, something is not right. I'm like, well, I reach out to my medical concierge. I'm like, I need an appointment. And that's
Yes.
what it is.
Yeah.
And I have a medical concierge, right? Like these are the people
Right.
that do the stuff for me. I don't have to do it. I'm like, hey, I need you to make this appointment. Blah, 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 blah. Can we go over my labs?
Yes.
It's
It's so empowering.
easy, right? It's easier, and I feel more educated and more empowered. And so that is what I think, if anything that people got out of this conversation is you do have a choice, you do have agency, you do have the ability to not be just a passive participant in your life. Like, it's your life. And I can't want more for you than you want for yourself. But what I can do is show you how I live my life and be a model and be a demonstration for people who are curious and interested and want to pursue this. And maybe that will be the encouragement, inspiration, or impetus for you to explore.
Yeah. And I just really appreciate how you've opened up your life and allowed us into your journey, even before you moved to Portugal,
Mhm.
because it's important to see to see that progression too, and it contributes to people feeling like they can do it too.
Mhm.
You know, so you're such a shining example, and like I said earlier, you were an
Thank
example for
you.
me before I even made this move.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we get to, have our light shine bright and so that others can see the light and the path
Yes.
and walk towards it, right?
Yes.
Get those plane tickets, right?
Yes. Make those plans.
Yes, absolutely. So, Courtney, as we start to wrap this amazing conversation, can you tell the good people where they might be able to find you?
Yes. Well, you can connect with me and Black Expat Stories over on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Black Expat Stories. Really, it's at Black Expat Stories everywhere. On Instagram, on TikTok. You can go to blackexpatstories.com to not just watch and listen to episodes, but you can also join our email list so that every episode and every conversation lands in your inbox. You can also find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And I love connecting with people. So feel free to reach out. And I read all my comments. I can't always get to every single one in my inbox or in the comment sections, but I love engaging because this is a conversation. I feel like
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily starting a conversation, I'm joining a conversation. And I am so invested in connecting with folks and hearing what they have to say and fielding some of the questions and really doing some listening to understand what people need to want and need to hear.
Yes, absolutely. And so thank you for sharing your brilliance, sharing your story, for creating Black Expat Stories and illuminating these conversations so they can serve as inspiration to us all. For those of you, I hope, like I said, you've already started subscribing to Courtney's channels. I was on episode 3, I think, of this current
Yes.
season. So tune into that if you want more of me. But if you want more of Courtney, Courtney is going to be on season 7 of the Blaxit Global podcast. So you've heard it here first. I will leave you all with that.
I'm so excited for that upcoming conversation. Yes. Thank you for having me,
Yes,
Krishan.
I am too. I am too. So, y'all, this is a wrap for tonight. I'm glad you all tuned in. I'll be back next week and I have a guest. So, be sure to tune in. Till then, be well, be safe, and I'll see you soon. Ciao, ciao.